and a greener society, we also have a tremendous opportunity to transform into a smarter society. Transforming a country's transportation network and mobility lifestyle is just one part of this journey to net zero. It is key to sustainable economy. I strongly believe an established EV ecosystem not only has the potential to impact a country's GDP, but also diversify the industrial supply chain and create more jobs. The benefits of EV ecosystem brings to a country's economy is substantial. Extraordinary and affordable devices are imagination made real. In the beginnings of this century, I believe a pivotal moment has arrived again. Taiwan is your most trusted and reliable partner. Through sharing and collaboration, let's strive together and create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Mr. Yong Liu, Chairman of Honhai Technology Group, Foxconn, for delivering such an important message. 3 fundamentals in harnessing the power of innovation for future economic growth that are share, collaborate, and also thrive. Foxconn loves to share experience, help your country to quickly build up your industry without making the same mistakes as they did. Collaborate, it means build and also localize, whilst thrive means greener, cleaner, and also smarter society. And it is also interesting to revisit what our 2 speakers earlier had to say. Mr. Alangga Hartarto also mentioned that governments must be at the driver's seat in responding to future challenges through stronger public-private partnership for concrete policy actions. He also mentioned about partnership between the public and private sector is key to the post-pandemic economic architecture. And towards the future, we must prepare for another green revolution, innovating for a major transformation towards a greener, bluer, and more digital economy that protects our planet and our future. He then proceeded to invite all of you, business community, governments, NGOs, to be part of the country's transformation. Professor Klaus Schwab also mentioned about innovation, ladies and gentlemen, and he pointed out that in terms of harnessing the power of innovation, he saw 5 imperatives for moving forward. The first one is leveraging the full potential of the 4th industrial revolution, that is, do it holistically. And focus in green economy, as green technology costs have fallen significantly over the last decade and will most likely continue to do so. And therefore, a fast transition to clean energy is cheaper than slow or no action. Thirdly, create genuine private-public partnership. Make innovation socially sustainable. And last but not least, build the human capital needed for innovation. He then concluded with government and private sector must cooperate. And once again, it's not about big fish versus small fish, but it's about fast fish versus slow fish. And apart from the speakers that we had earlier today, we're going to have a very packed agenda today, that including a conversation with the Binance CEO, Mr. Changpeng Zhao, and of course, Mr. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and now Twitter also. And we're also going to take a listen to what Her Majesty Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, in her capacity as UN Secretary General Special Advocate for Inclusive Finance for Development, has to say, as well as actress Anne Hathaway, in her capacity as UN Women Goodwill Ambassador, speaking about unlocking the full potential of women in the economy. Now, the setting is ready, ladies and gentlemen, for our panel's discussion 1. It is time for us to gain deeper insight about the topic of harnessing the power of innovation for future economic growth. Now, I would like to invite the moderator and panelists to come up on stage. The moderator for today, Mr. Jack Azaguri, Group Chief Executive Accenture, and the speakers are Ms. Candice Johnson, co-founder of SES and Laurel Teleport Europe, Mr. Christian Guevara, Chief Executive Officer of Telefonica Brazil, Mr. Anthony Tan, CEO and co-founder of Grab, Mr. Alvin Sadat Maja, President Director of Elang Mahkota Teknologi, Mr. Deep Kapuria, Chairman of the High Tech Group. Mr. Azaguri, the time is yours.
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished participants. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you together here and with distinguished panel. I also want to say a huge congratulations for a flawless organization of this B20 forum that is surrounded by the unique and warm hospitality of Indonesia. We have an amazing panel here. I will do quick introductions and set the context. In alphabetical order, I'll start with Alvin Sadat Maja, who is the President Director of MTech, one of the region's largest and most successful technology, media, and healthcare companies. Anthony Tan, CEO and co-founder of Grab. The company needs no introduction, one of the most successful startups in the world, with a super app that covers payments, delivery services, ride-hailing, and much more. Candice Johnson, founder of SES and co-founder of Laurel Teleport Europe. She is the entrepreneurial mind behind some of the largest and most successful satellite companies, and chairs one of the largest private equity funds related to space. Christian Guevara, CEO of Telefonica Brazil, also known as Vivo, one of Brazil's largest telecommunication company. And last, but by no means least, Deep Kapuria, chairman of the High Tech Group, the highly successful India-based auto components and technology manufacturer. I want to set a little bit of context before we get to the panel discussion. We have made some progress during the pandemic around internet and connectivity. But today, 2.7 billion people in our planet still are disconnected. We have to do better. We have a responsibility as business and government leaders to do better. We know that telecommunications and digital connectivity drive GDP growth. The UN has showed it. AI can drive double-digit increase in GDP. And our own research shows that 88% of CEOs, many of you in the room, are going to significantly increase digital spending despite the backdrop of uncertain economic conditions. 60% of global GDP relies on digital communications technology. But the RAND Corporation has said that 14 of the G20 nations can miss out on $11.5 trillion of economic growth because of the skills gap. And that's what it boils down to for me, closing the digital skills gap. We have to be talent creators, not just talent consumers. We have to do better. At Accenture, 20% of our entry-level hires in the US do no longer have 4-year degrees because we focus on skills, not what university they came from. Our own research shows that if we doubled the level of digital fluency amongst women, we would close the pay gap, the gender pay gap, by 21%. And we also face a problem with 32 million refugees around the world. And I know many of your companies and ours are hiring refugees from Afghanistan, from Ukraine, and other parts of the world. So let's start the discussion. And I'm going to start with you, Anthony. And my first question, I'd like to get your perspective on how innovation can drive global economic growth.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here. Well, first of all, you know, in recent years, you just talked about it, it's been tough for all of us. But there has been silver linings. So for example, if you look at the recent studies, whether it's Accenture, McKinsey, many of the shows how digital adoption has been accelerated over the 4 or 5 years ahead of time. And we've seen it, one of the other silver linings, 100 million new internet users in Southeast Asia. But how did this happen? I mean, we've seen actually many of our what we call UMKM or small and medium or micro SMEs have a tough time trying to embrace this change. And companies like us, how do we help them embrace this change? How do we uplift them? One thing we've done is just during the pandemic, they had no choice. Lockdowns, they didn't know how to start their business. They didn't know how to restart, how to sell. So we created things like GrabMart, where we accelerated their business. Imagine, in your wet traditional market, on demand now you can get that service for all your grocery needs. We've been able to do that. I'll give you a quick story. Ibu Siska, which is a lady selling a small stall about this size. She used Grab. It accelerated her business. She now generates about $15,000 US a month. And she even knows how to use our digital advertising tools, our financial tools on her app. Right? This was a lady in her 50s, and now 90% of her business is online. That's the beauty of really accelerating that. But again, that's not enough. I think even building new tools, forcing ourselves to innovate for uplifting them is insufficient. One other thing we need to do even beyond that is how do we digitize even beyond just Jakarta, which is a great city, but the tier 2, tier 3 cities. And with that, I am very blessed, Grab is very blessed to have a great partner, MTech, who together we acted on Kota Masa Depan, which meaning building future cities. And together we've been able to accelerate digitization across these cities. But I'll let Alvin talk more about that.
That's an amazing story, how you change people's lives. Alvin, I'm going to turn to you. MTech was founded in '83 as a distributor, now a huge organization. Your thoughts on innovation to drive economic growth?
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here. I will speak from a very practical experience for us as a business group, where we have witnessed economic growth driven by the various ways of innovation and technology. For us as a group, we are able to enter into many new businesses which were previously considered to be off limits in the offline/analog world. Businesses like e-commerce, retail, payment, digital banking, online healthcare, OTT, which in the old world required a lot of capital, resources, and time to build the infrastructure needed to support a competitive business in those verticals, were suddenly open. And technology have completely rewritten the rules of engagement of what can and can't be done, how fast you can scale a business and build a business. If you can provide a service that is relevant and value adding to your customer, then you can build a very sizable business quickly. So there's been a big reshuffling of the deck across the various industries where new players have emerged thanks to technology and innovation. Secondly, and I think, I feel that we have been engaging in a lifelong and never-ending process of digitizing our traditional businesses, transforming, tech-enabling, if you may, which is much more difficult to do compared to creating new businesses from scratch, where you have a modern platform and you can rethink everything from the ground up. Because of COVID, we are forced to accelerate that process and really relook at business processes, supply chain, customer facing. And because many of our businesses are in the services industry, we have so much data, which in the old world is somewhat meaningless. But in today's world, with a modern data management platform, so much can be derived, so many insights can be derived as to our customer, our market, which in turn can be used to provide a better service and value add to our customer. Thirdly, this is something that I feel is often very overlooked and also underappreciated, is the importance of having an innovative and forward-looking government policy. As an Indonesian, I have been very proud and fortunate to have a government under the leadership of President Jokowi, who's been able to not only have great vision, but marry that vision with leadership and execution, so that the policy that comes out really results and fosters wealth creation, job creation, and the eventual trickle down and multiplier effect in the economy. Take a very practical example of nickel. I think 6-7 years ago, Indonesia used to export less than $1 billion worth of nickel and nickel products. And since the government came up with the policy that the midstream and downstream process needs to be done onshore, we have seen one of the biggest value creation, job creation, and and the skill transfer from the developed world to the developing world, which is immense. And in this year, I think alone, we will see more than $20 billion worth of export in the nickel category. And when the downstreaming is complete with the battery and EV, I think the numbers will approach more than 100 billion eventually. So it is clear that the great policy making, very forward-looking policy making, implemented correctly, can create so much value. So out of those practical experience, I'm a big believer that innovation and technology can really drive economic growth forward.
Certainly very compelling, and there's no doubt there's been an acceleration during COVID, a compression of the time it takes to transform. Deep, I'm going to go to you, and I'd like to get your views on lessons learned. Technology doesn't always deliver on its promise, but I'd like to get your views on lessons learned in your application of technology and innovation.
Innovation is something that is possibly the lifeline for any company. Whether it's conventional manufacturing, we are in both, or a technology company. However, which was just expressed, that when you are in a legacy kind of a manufacturing environment, to bring in innovation is very, very different than to bring in innovation to a technology company. So when you're trying to get a manufacturing company to innovate, you need the buy-in for a lot of issues in terms of how you get the adaptability, and not only adaptability, but the acceptance as a culture of innovation. And that's the struggle. Many a times what we have done is used analogies. When you're trying to change, you bring in analogies to say that how can you do quick, let's say, tool change in less than a minute when you're taking 30 minutes doing it. So you bring them to a Formula One car and say, this is how it works. So these analogies sort of bring that culture to an innovative culture. But on the other side, the technology side, you have a very different side of workforce. A workforce which is ready to go. So many times you have to hold them to to a way that you have limited issue of experimentation. So what it happens is that how do you limit yourself and also say that, okay, you can fail. You know, that acceptance is that when you design an experiment to fail, and what you don't actually reward is just success, but you also say that not doing anything is something not acceptable. I think that brings in a lot of the cultural change to bring in innovation.
I fully agree the importance of failing fast, but not acceptable not to try. Candice, you've architected one of the world's largest satellite space systems. I'd like to get your views on lessons learned from innovation.
Yes. So I have asked if I could perhaps show some slides, and our wonderful tech company, there you go. Okay. So, you know, I was born in a family that my satellites for the United States and then did the world's first private satellite system. So from the time I was 5 years old, when I received a toy Sputnik on the Christmas tree with Santa Claus inside, I thought everything good came from space. And, you know, innovation, so important. But you know what? Inspiration, I think, is even better. So this is a picture when I was 30 years old, 35, and we're in Peru, and we're launching my first satellite, SES Astra 1. The Grand Duke of Luxembourg is behind me, good-looking guy. The Prime Minister of Luxembourg with the white hair is behind him. 5 years before, I had conceived Astra, the world's first private trans-border satellite system. You see, in 1983, you can see that we are covering all of Europe. Not half of Europe, as it was at that time, but all of Europe. And so when we launched our satellite in 1988, 9 months later, the wall fell down, and we had a satellite system that could cover all of Europe. And we started it from that very, very little country in Luxembourg, between Germany and France. You can barely see it on the thing. So, you know, you always have to go forward. And when the wall fell down, I conceived the first transporter launch cooperation, commercializing not American technology like Elon Musk, Russian technology with American marketing, ILS, International Launch Services, and you see my satellite, Astra, on the top of that, 1995, April 9th. It's one thing to become number one, it's another thing to stay number one, and circumstances made it that if I was going to keep my satellite system, SES, Astra, independent, I needed to go global. And so 2001, I architected SES Global and became the world's largest satellite system. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember that first picture where unfortunately I was the only woman? Well, you know what? Things change. And so here, Oceania Women's Network Satellite, 10 years ago, a couple of women and I in the Pacific and Global Telecom Women's Network, we got together and we created and helped create Pacific. And I'm very proud to say that we're bringing high-throughput broadband internet to all of the islands in the Pacific, and also here, there we go, also to Indonesia. And it's so great to work with, isn't it? And private initiative, and we just got together, the satellite, to colleges, to universities, to hotels, to hospitals, to villages, etc. I have described my life as going from providing satellites, or using satellites to provide universal access, and going to use satellites to provide access to the universe. And indeed, we do have space debris now. We have intended and unintended objects, and we are also using now satellites to be able to use, to observe our Earth, to help with the Earth observation, with the ocean observation. And we also such as North Star to be able to space traffic management, very important. And Jack talked about the fact that I'm also the chair of Seraphim Space, the world's largest space tech fund. We're investing in innovation. I see everything. I see young people coming together and building in labs for, food on Earth and food on the moon. I see another young woman building her own spaceship to do pharmaceutical possibilities in microgravity. Hopefully one day we're going to also get a, let's just see if we can get this, there we go, an all-female space crew for the International Space Station. So.
It's an amazing story, and also great to see the progress in diversity from your first picture in the 80s
I thought it was kind of
to
fun.
today.
Particularly for the women empowerment here
Exactly.
in Indonesia. Yeah.
Christian, I'm going to go to you. You chair the B20 Digitization Task Force. Amazing work in Brazil in terms of promoting and deploying digital technology and connectivity. Your thoughts on the growth, how to drive more innovation, how it drives economic growth, and also maybe your view in developing countries.
Okay, so thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm from Brazil, not far away from Indonesia, but being here for these 2 days, you can see a lot of similar things about the challenge that we face in our country and you face here in Indonesia. We are like large country with large population, and I do believe that digitalization can change, especially reduce inequality, include other people, and bring much more diversity to our companies. So during the pandemic, innovation was accelerated. I think Anthony gave an example, and we could see this example not only in our company, but in our customers, our clients. Companies that were not prepared to handle the digital relationship with customers, they suffered a lot. And at the same time, they started to accelerate this implementation. Even us, as family members, we had everyone back home, and kids needed to go to school, homeschooling. We needed to work from home. So we have like the largest fiber network in Brazil. We have today 22 million home passed with fiber. And we saw the demand for fiber rising during the pandemic because we were so used to have download, and suddenly we were also needed to use upload. Video became part of our lives. So that's innovation. Companies started to invest in cloud. Companies started to invest in collaborative tools. Companies started to invest in cybersecurity, because protection of the digital world is also changing. So that's a big shift. And as an organization, we need also to change many things. We are now working in a hybrid model. We started before the pandemic. We were maybe a little bit ahead of time. But now that's the reality that people really want to work in an environment that can be on-site, but also working from home. So we need to adapt. That's also innovation, to attract people, talented people, to develop new skills. We need to change not only the culture, that's also important, but the way we work. So we are trying to implement many different methodologies to work with more design thinking, more critical solving, and also bringing diversity to our workforce. People need to be seen as a society in our workforce. They was talking about gender, we need to talk about race, we need to talk about people with disabilities. We need to include everyone to make it really foster innovation, creativity, and that's what we are doing today. And in the B20, participating as a co-chair was great because the challenges are there, and we need, as a country, Indonesia, then next year is going to be India, then it's going to be Brazil, 3 countries with similar things where we believe digitalization needs to be more accessible, and it has the power to change inequality, to bring education to those who don't have it in the physical world, brings health to those who don't have it in the physical world, bring financial inclusion to those who don't have it, and there are many examples here. So Again, I think we're in the beginning of the journey, and innovation has to be part of our journey as a company, but also as a provider for solutions for customers, B2C and B2B.
That's amazing developments in Brazil. I'm going to move to an important question, which we heard earlier, the role of governments, public partnerships. We heard that earlier from Professor Schwab. And I'm going to start with you, Deep. I'd like to get your view on public-private partnerships, the role of government, how to collaborate.
I think it's possibly the most important thing going. The challenge is to translate it. It's a great idea, public-private partnership. It's been there for a while. It's a lot of I think the way that it's being approached, at least in India, is that get the participation both on the side of technology and inside of investments. It's important because if you see overall in the given situation, and specifically in the recent past, after COVID, that the companies are not making that much money to spare for the innovation or technology. But on the other side, it becomes important for the government to come in at this point so that they can work together on these projects. Let me give you an example of it. I also chair a public-private partnership company, which is called Global Innovation and Technology Alliance. It was started about 10 years back with the whole purpose to create an ecosystem for innovation and get companies to start, and even the startups to start doing research and development. And the concept was that not only use the government funds, but also get into collaboration with the other nations as well. Today we have 9 countries that we are working with. And how it works is that's a kind of one company from, let's say, we have a partnership with Israel, just as an example, and they have tremendous amount of traction from that side. So one company from Israel, one company from India, let's say $1 million worth of project. So $250,000 from the Indian company, $250,000 from the Israeli company, and the balance comes from the governments. So they can do an innovation project of $1 million, which may or may not work. You know, you have to accept that when you're getting into an R&D and innovation project, it can fail. And that's very, very important to accept. So that's one of the thoughts that how the governments can collaborate. The other way that is also being done is of incubation centers. Incubation centers are not only being partnered with universities, but also with the private companies. Like we have innovation kind of a incubation center, which we allow the MSMEs to come in, work from the desks, and provide them some kind of help in terms of literally getting from the aspect of the government funds to the private funds. So you know that the proverbial valley of death is avoided. So there's a public fund, and when they get to the private fund, that's when a lot of the SMEs lose their way and actually die. So that's how it's all operating. And there are many, many such examples. In the interest of time, I'll stop here.
We're going to come close to wrapping up. Anthony, I'd like your final thoughts on the topic of public partnership, and especially what it means in developing countries. Anthony.
So just two, given time is short, I think number one is governments and companies like ours, how do you work on minimal to no friction. So, you know, I just want to celebrate the Indonesian government. We worked with the Ministry of Cooperatives. They were super helpful. They helped us onboard many thousands of wet market, traditional wet markets all across Indonesia. So just working together, again, we are small. It's about leveraging and working and standing on shoulders of giants, and there's no better giant than the Indonesian government. That's number one. Number two is, I think on public and private collaboration, you know, we take, for example, EV. EV is a massive social issue, or climate change, but specifically, how do you deal with it with EVs? Effectively, there is a cold start problem today, where, you know, if there's not enough charging stations, a lot of people don't invest in EVs, and if there's not enough EVs, people don't invest in charging stations. So that is one complex issue that we can partner on. So I'll give you an example here. You know, Grab again. We decided to say, look, we have to solve this with partners like many here, PLN, Pertamina, Gesit, VR. We've been able to partner and launch. Today we have over 8,500 electric vehicles. They've done over 100 million kilometers in electric kilometers. Again, thanks to the customers who love it. We've saved over 10,000 tons of carbon emissions. But again, we're just in the beginning. This can only happen with amazing collaboration, and again, by standing on the shoulders of giants, and many of them are here.
Yeah, I mean, you've outlined the role of technology, innovation, combined with sustainability. These things go hand in hand. I want to thank this distinguished panel. It's been a huge privilege. Please join me in a huge round of applause for our panel.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Azaguri, thank you so much for the insightful discussion. And we got several important notes from the discussion. It's very enlightening as well. Ms. Candace Johnson, co-founder of SES and Laurel Teleport Europe, thank you so much for sharing to us. And she said that innovation is important, but inspiration is even better. And the story of SES that she shared was so beautiful and was so inspiring. SES, for those who are unaware of it, is a satellite communication service provider that offers telecommunication services. And also, she shared about the progress of diversity there in her company. Mr. Christian Gebra, CEO of Telefonica Brazil, also shared about Indonesia, India, and Brazil will become three of the biggest economies in the world, and they will need technology to bring things digitally to people that they don't have physically. It's really interesting as well what Mr. Anthony Tan shared, that many of MSMEs or UMKM in Indonesian term had a tough time embracing the change when digital economy kicked in, especially when the pandemic hit. It was dark days for them, for the MSMEs, but Grab's innovation helped MSMEs not only to survive, but up to this day, to thrive. And working together between government and private sector is truly important, and public and private collaboration example is EV or electric vehicle, and Grab has been able to partner with 8,500 EV owners because customers love it and it saves carbon emission. Mr. Alvin Saratmaja of MTech Group pointed out that MTech has been engaging in never-ending digitizing its business, and because of COVID, MTech was forced to accelerate that process. And no less important is great policy and also implementation. And for example, nickel. In the past, Indonesia exported raw nickel ore, but not anymore, because nowadays, Republic of Indonesia exports processed and value-added goods. So once again, thank you so much for the discussion, and we're looking forward to another discussion or one-on-one conversation after this. So after this, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a one-on-one conversation discussing about investing in future talents, technology, and financial resources with Mr. Chang Peng Chow. It's really interesting. The CEO of Binance once tweeted, in particular on Sunday, saying that self-custody is a fundamental human right, and you are free to do it at any time. Just make sure you do it right. And it's very intriguing to, listen more and learn more from Mr. Chang Peng Chao. So ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, that our next agenda is one-on-one conversation with the main topic of investing in future talents, technology, and financial resources. So please welcome on stage the moderator and also speaker, Mr. Aldi Haryo Pratomo, Vice Chair of Indonesia FinTech Association as the moderator, and of course, Mr. Chang Peng Chao, the CEO of Binance.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aldi. I'm the Vice Chair of the Indonesian FinTech Association, and we're here today with CZ, who runs the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. At the peak, they traded 24 hours, $170 billion of crypto. So this week has been a really eventful week for crypto. So despite all that's going on, thank you for being here with us, CZ. What have you enjoyed the most about Indonesia so far?
I've actually been to Indonesia, specifically Bali, many times. It's a fantastic place. In addition to being a very nice vacation resort, Bali is also the crypto center of Indonesia, right? There's a lot of crypto people here. So we have quite an active community here. I've been meeting with our Binance angels, who are community volunteers, just learning more about what's going on here. So it's been a fantastic experience.
No, thank you, and we hope you keep coming to Bali, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's start with a quick intro, I think, on crypto and Binance, right? So we're at B20 Indonesia. The audience is filled with global business and world leaders. What do you think it's important for them to know about crypto and Binance?
Those are big topics. I think crypto, the way I would describe it is, if you think about internet, it's just a new technology. It was just a new technology for transferring information.
Yep.
That's all the technology is. It's just data packets over a wire or over the air. But because of that, we're able to build entire industries, new economies, virtual worlds. Today, if somebody take away your phone, you feel really awkward. This new technology, crypto, is just a new technology for transferring value. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. So, but with this new technology, we can now build new business models. It's changing the way we do fundraising. It's changing the way we do investments. It's changing the way we do payments. Now we can do micropayments. We can do cross-border remittances. So we can do NFTs, metaverse. All of this is going to come. Some of them are already here, like global fundraising using either ICOs, IDOs, IEOs. Yep. It's already here. So if one technology deals with information, this new technology deals with money. Yep. So the impact is going to be tremendous. You will impact economic sectors very heavily. The technology for a better form of money is going to give you a better form of a fintech industry, financial sector, which is going to be the pillar for every other sector. So it's very important to understand this technology. At the same time, there's a lot of risks. We're in a new industry. We've seen over the past week things go crazy here. So in the industry. So we do need some regulations. We do need to do this properly. We do need to do this in a stable way. So all of that is happening. Binance is one of the larger players in the industry. Most people know Binance as a cryptocurrency exchange, but we actually have much more than that. We also invest and own multiple decentralized wallets. We also own CoinMarketCap, which is the most visited website in crypto for information. We invest heavily in DeFi, in blockchain technologies, etc. So we also invest very strongly in local economies in different parts of the world. So we also we are probably one of the few platforms who push very heavily on education and charity, etc. So Binance is more like an ecosystem of tools that we want to help people to access crypto with.
Oh, thank you. That's a very broad explanation. So let's dive into the use cases, right? Because ultimately it's about being useful. That's what a technology should be. So you mentioned about crypto's function as enabling entrepreneurs anywhere to raise money globally, yep. Like Polygon in India, for example, right? But on the flip side of that is there risk for capital flight, because if money can come in, money can also come out. This has been a concern that some regulators and banks have expressed. What would you say to that concern over the benefits of actually being able to raise money globally?
Yeah, so I'll actually say the reverse. If money couldn't go out, money would not come in, right? So as a, as kind of an offshore business, to start a business in Indonesia, to register for a license, I think you have to deposit like $5 million US-ish.
Yeah, around, yeah.
Right, so like 3 to 5 million-ish US dollars. And the first question people will think about, hey, I can wire the money in, but at some point, can I wire the money out? So if the second one is not guaranteed, it's not open, people will not wire money in. So, and blockchain provides a very, very useful tool for entrepreneurs in Indonesia or in any other place in the world to raise money. Today, any entrepreneur with a decent background, with good reputation, with a decent product idea can raise 10, 20 million US-dollars in a matter of days. Whereas doing the same thing through the traditional VCs will take years. And also, I think Indonesia does not quite have a very strong VC ecosystem. Like, compared to the size, in dollar terms, compared to the US guys, are much smaller.
It's still young.
Yeah, it's still young. But just because we're still young here, we can leverage a new technology. In the US, the VCs are so established, they're actually more scared of this new technology. Because we're young and we don't have such heavy establishments yet, we can just use this new technology for entrepreneurs to raise money. This is the most direct form of foreign direct investment. So every country, every leader I spoke to, everyone wants foreign direct investment. But why don't you let entrepreneurs raise money using the blockchain through ICOs, etc.? So this technology provides that.
Yeah, so your recommendation essentially is for the regulators to open up, right? But also another part of what brings foreign capital in and capital out is taxation. There's a recent crypto tax introduced, for example, in Indonesia and some other markets. What do you have to say about those?
Yeah, so I actually think the current tax, the new tax that was introduced recently in Indonesia, is not optimal. I think tax is perfectly fine, and the way to achieve the highest amount of that you can tax is actually through, I think, which could be wrong, is actually through a lower tax number. So look, if you take things to the extreme, right? If you tax $99 out of a $100 transaction, you're not going to get any tax because no one's going to do that transaction. And also in crypto, there's less of a country border concept. When you tax the local entities very heavily, well, the local transactions, the transactions that happen on local platforms very heavily, all those transactions are going to move to offshore platforms. And then you actually end up taxing very little. If you tax a little bit and the transaction volume is high, then the total amount of tax you receive is actually higher, right? So it doesn't mean higher percentage tax always give you the highest return or highest tax collected. Also, I personally would highly recommend don't tax on the user transactions. If you tax 0.12% per user transaction, that's not going to be a lot of transactions. Tax the businesses in the industry. So tax corporate income. And in order to tax corporate income, you should give licenses more easily. And when you give a license, then you can ask for data. Then you have a conversation. So then you have control. If you don't give licenses, and most platforms are operating either offshore or in other ways, so quite a number of things are counterintuitive. It's much better to give licenses to be open, and then I highly recommend not taxing the user transactions, but tax the corporate income.
Understood. Okay, let's move on a little bit. So let's move on to banking and finance. There's quite a few bankers in the room today, right? So do you believe that DeFi and crypto will replace traditional finance? And how will the two worlds interact?
Yeah, so I think in the short term, no. Long term, maybe. It's possible. I think short term, today crypto is still pretty hard to use. I think this is probably not a very crypto centric crowd.
Yeah.
So I think I would guess most people will find it very difficult to download their wallet, do a backup of the private key, store it in multiple places, encrypt it, and then have a way to pass that on to their kids when they're no longer around. So all of that is quite hard to do today. I think today, today 99% of the wealth is still in fiat currencies, traditional financial systems. So we need to integrate the two so that people can start to use this new technology in a steady fashion. But the growth here is going to be faster than the growth in the traditional financial spaces. So so that trajectory looks kind of like that, but kind of bumpy, to be honest. But in the long future, though, I do think as the 10, 20 years, as the next generation comes into play, they will be crypto natives. Like the teenagers today, they look at crypto, they think that's just very normal. So 20 years, like the teenagers are 30 something, they'll be doing businesses in crypto only. So crypto is a much easier form of money. It's much easier to do transactions once you know how to use it. It's much lower friction and it's much global. So it has some advantages. It has some really significant advantages, but today it's just not hard. It's kind of hard to use. So over the long term, when we solve those usability problems, I think more and more people will migrate to crypto.
Yeah, and you always mention in the past about Binance's role as being a platform of platforms, right? Where you're leading the charge in building the technology to increase mass adoption. So what do you mean by that? Maybe explain to the audience. And what are the things that still need to be built in your mind today to get so that everybody in this room in the next few B20s will actually have a self-hosted wallet?
Yeah, so what we try to do is just to provide access to crypto. It could be liquidity that people want to buy and sell. That's a very basic form of it. That's the exchange. Most people think of us as only doing that. But anything that helps people, like CoinMarketCap, is a place for people to access crypto information. So most people use that website to look up, coin, the history, etc. So happy to provide that. Even custody, self-custody wallets, as we were mentioning before, Trust Wallet, we provide that. That's a tool that people hold their own private keys on themselves, and they hold their crypto funds. And we have we don't want to control. Well, we don't want to touch that. So, and we also help other entrepreneurs in the space. We invest very heavily in the ecosystem, and actually our investment has done really, really well over the last 4 years. I think we've done over 70x over the last 4 years, wow. even at today's prices. So yeah, so we just want to help to build tools. I think the talk I did here like 3 days ago. Yeah, so I learned from a very senior guy in Google. He said, look, Google provides a number of infrastructure services in the internet space. They do a bunch of stuff that people don't even think about, like the time on your phone is synced with a Google Internet server. The DNS, the 8.8.8, that's also provided by Google. So all of those things are free, but the internet becomes more usable. So we just want to provide any tool for people to use crypto for.
Yeah, and as you do this, I think you'll become bigger and more powerful and more central in the industry. So right now, we looked at the spot trading volume for the last 24 hours. Binance was 13 billion. The next one, the closest one, is 1.3 billion, right? How big is too big? And what are your thoughts about, as you get bigger, your responsibility in the ecosystem to protect consumers?
Yeah, so there are natural network effects and centralization versus decentralization forces at play. There's economy of scale. And so the larger exchanges like us, we can invest very heavily on security. And we can invest, because of our liquidity, people get better prices by trading on Binance. So they come to us more. So there's a network effect. So the bigger ones do tend to get bigger, even in a free market.
That's right.
So that's just natural economic forces. At a certain size, though, I think for our industry, it is better to sort of have more decentralization. Today, though, at the same time, I think the proper players, if we do things properly, people actually come to you. There is quite a lot of players in our space that try to cut corners to grow quickly. And that actually destroys consumer trust. When they don't trust them, they don't go to them. They actually go to a platform they trust. So I think just I really encourage all the other players in the space, run businesses very solidly, very properly. That's the best way to grow. So we try to help grow other exchanges, other DeFi protocols, other wallets, etc. We invest heavily in them. We invest in other centralized exchanges too, try to help them grow. We also invest in a local exchange here in Indonesia. So we try to help them grow, but there are natural forces. So we don't really control how big we are, how small we are, etc. We just try to provide the best service, the most secure, the most reliable service to our users.
And in terms of protecting consumers, what is the role of the regulators, the government, the central bank, in your view, because of recent events? Right? FTX collapsed recently, and there could be more, right? Especially in the derivative sector, for example. Like, what would be the role of the central bank and other regulators in this case?
I think the industry collectively has a role to protect consumers, to protect everybody. So it's not just regulators. Regulators does absolutely have a role, but it's also not 100% of their responsibility. No one can protect a bad player, to be very frank. If a guy is very good at lying and is very good at just pretending to be what he's not, somebody wants to violate the law is not going to prevent that. The law can help to reduce that. As industry players, we should be more vocal about it. We should set very strong standards for the industry. Actually, one of the things we will do very soon, given the events that happen, we will try to collect the other industry players together, form an industry association globally, try to deal with some of the common standards in business, etc. So as industry players, we have a responsibility as well. The VC investors have a responsibility. They invest in businesses that didn't work. That hurt a lot of users. They're also responsible. The consumers are responsible as well. The schools are responsible. Why aren't we teaching people about consumer financial risk assessment in schools? So everybody's responsible. No one can completely prevent it. But the regulators do have a role. We do need slightly more. We do need to increase the clarity of regulations and the sophistication of regulations in the crypto space. Most of the regulations today deal with KYC and AML. The natural response is to borrow the regulations from traditional financial systems. How do we regulate banks? Most regulators think of crypto exchanges like banks. But crypto exchanges operate very, very differently from banks. In a bank, it's very, very normal for a bank to move user assets for investments and try to make returns. In crypto, if you run a crypto exchange that way, it's almost guaranteed to go down. To the traditional financial regulators, to them, they may not even be thinking about this before this week. But we, Binance, have always held 100% reserves of user assets. And we're leading the way to do proof of reserves, publicly disclosing all of our cold wallet addresses. And other industry players are forced to follow, because if they don't follow, they become even smaller. And when they follow, some of them have some issues now. So, but we, as an industry, we need to increase the transparency. We need to work very closely with regulators all around the world to make this industry more robust. But there's a strong role for regulators to play, but we can't blame this on anybody, or any single party.
Understand. Actually, that's actually the point, right? Because crypto is a borderless technology, and yet regulators are now operated based on borders. So what is your thoughts on that, crypto as a global phenomenon versus like local exchanges that exist in different markets?
Yeah, so there's like a balancing force between technology innovation versus traditional concept of a country border.
Yep.
If you think about a country border, that's a human-made concept, right? So in the natural world, the country border doesn't exist. It's just like a bunch of guys agree, this is the border, that becomes the border. And now the technologies we have, we're post-internet. We now have blockchain. The internet doesn't have a lot of borders. Today, when you use the internet, you do a Google search, you click on our Twitter ad, guess what? That's ran by a company in the US. It's kind of borderless. And when you click on an ad, that revenue goes to the US or some other country. Or it could be a local company here servicing other people around the world. But in the blockchain world now, we're post-internet, it's going to be much, much more global. So each country should try to develop their local talent, the local, what we call Web3 economy, so that they can service the rest of the world. The better the country, the better countries that can do that, the more money they will make from the rest of the world. So the old concept of like limiting everything by a country border is going to be quite tough going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned about talent, actually, interestingly, because I think the competition for talent is also global now, right? And you yourself actually worked in worked in the crypto or like a trade exchange in Tokyo, right, a while back in 2005. What advice would you give to the Gen Z now, who is starting out, right? They were digitally native, now they're crypto native. What would you say to them today to build their careers?
It's a tricky one. So I think different people have different skill sets. I typically recommend people, especially the younger generation, to become good at one thing first. Because of the global competitiveness, today we can hire the best programmer anywhere in the world, in Indonesia, in Jakarta, in other places. They can work from home. So the competition is global now. So you got to be very good at what you do. And if you try to be very good at many things, it's quite a bit harder than trying to be good at one thing first. But as you become more seasoned, more experienced, people can become more generalists. Founders, CEOs are typically generalists. But I typically recommend people to be good at one thing first, and then grow from that. And also have a very global mindset. Don't just look for jobs in the local economy. If you're a programmer, for example, there probably are higher paying jobs in more developed countries, etc. But you can work from here and live here, and it's a beautiful lifestyle here, and have those jobs. And also learn about new technologies. The world is changing really, really quickly. So for the younger generation, always learn about new technologies.
No, thank you. Any closing statements for the audience?
Not much. I mean, so over the last week, there's so much turmoil in our industry. But I want everybody to understand that's not reflective of everything in the industry. The industry goes through ups and downs. We have one or maybe even more bad players in the industry, but the industry is still growing, so we're still building. Yeah, so thank you for your support.
Yeah, thank you very much, CZ, for your time today. Everybody, CZ. Thank you so much.
Mr. Aldi, thank you so much, and also Mr. Chow for the inspiration and stories that you just shared. And we can learn that self-custody is a fundamental human right. That's what Mr. Chow tweeted on Sunday. You are free to do it at any time, just make sure to do it right. And he also explained and mentioned that crypto is actually like internet in the first days. It was a new technology for transferring information, internet, back then. But because of what we were able to build, technologies, communication, etc., thanks to the internet. And crypto is just like the internet. It's a new technology, but now we can do many things, different business model, transferring money, storing money, and many other activities. And it comes with risk, as with other new technologies. And he also pointed out that current taxation done by governments is actually not optimum. Don't tax on transaction, but tax on the corporate income. And because of big liquidity, he also said that more people come to Binance, and he also pointed out that we do need more decentralization. Mr. Chow also pointed out that industry has to protect consumers, not only the government that has to do it. Industry players need to set very high tone and standard for the industry itself, and regulator does have a role. We need to make it clearer in regards with the regulation on cryptocurrency. All right, now we're moving on to another exciting, and I can guarantee this must be one of the sessions that you have been following and looking up to. And we're having another insightful one-on-one conversation with one of the top global leaders in technology, with the main topic of navigating future disruption of global technological innovation.
A little less conversation, a little more action. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. A little more bite, a little less spark. A little less fight, a little more.
All right, that was the back sound, not my voice though. The bass sound was so cool. I'd like to invite Mr. Anindya Bakri, who has been joining us now, the CEO and President Director of PT Bakri and Brothers, and also the one and only Mr. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla Inc., SpaceX, and now Twitter as well, joining us virtually. Take it away, Mr. Bakri.
Ladies and gentlemen, No need introduction. Please welcome Elon Musk. Hi, Elon.
Sorry, we actually just weirdly.
Nice shirt.
Hi, we had a power outage about 3 minutes before this call. My apologies. That's why I'm like bizarrely in the dark here.
Elon, you are lucky because you have unprofessional moderator. It's the first time I'm doing it. But I'm sure we're going to have fun, especially when we wear this shirt.
Great.
Thank you for wearing it. We sent it 15,000 kilometers across the globe.
Thank you. Thanks for this awesome shirt.
Just quick thing, Elon. The batik that you have is from Central Sulawesi, from small village. It is a place where you have a lot of nickels there, so you may like to visit there.
Great.
And they have this ambition to make net zero industrial park with clean energy. So that's why this batik bomba is special. I hope you like it.
It's great. Thank you for this awesome shirt. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Elon, I know you are a hard worker, but with a lot of headlines that you make lately, if I were you, I would jump on a plane and fly to Bali and kind of like hide a little bit or relax. Why don't you do that?
I mean, that sounds fantastic. But my workload has recently increased quite a lot. I mean, oh man. I have too much work on my plate, that is for sure.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Elephant in the room question, Elon. Of course, Twitter. First, how does it feel to be media mogul? Okay, noted. Next question.
I'm sort of more like, is Twitter sort of media, but it's not exactly media. I mean, there's a medium as opposed to media. So it's, but I mean, it's to speak because there's no way to make everyone happy, that's for sure.
I see. Now, Elon, we are Twitter nation, fourth largest in the world. A lot of millennials and Gen Z. Even President Jokowi has about 19 million followers. What is the future of Twitter for these developing countries, but already in G20, including the likes Brazil and India? Can you share a little bit?
I think Indonesia has an incredibly exciting, bright future because there's just so much youth and energy, and the population. I think a lot of people in the world don't realize that Indonesia has one of the world's highest populations of any country. So I think the combination of the youth, energy, large population, a lot of resources. I think the future is extremely exciting for Indonesia. So. Yeah, I'm I guess bullish on Indonesia, if you will. I think it's very, very exciting, bright future.
So there was a thought, I think we interacted a little bit in Boca Chica about Twitter TV. Because over here, information is being disseminated using free-to-air TV antenna to 17,500 islands. Imagine user-generated content, short videos, trending topics. Is it a good idea or a bad idea?
No, I think that's a great idea. Twitter for sure, I think needs to do a lot more on video, and it's kind of a no-brainer to enable a longer video on Twitter. and also enable content creators to make a living with content that they submit to Twitter. So Twitter really needs to give a revenue share to content creators in order for them to make a living creating content and having that content be on Twitter.
Oh, great to hear that. Now, let's talk about Tesla. Now, the world is decoupling, Elon, as you know it, right? And of course, with the conflict, Russia-Ukraine, it will make it even worse. This decoupling also make the electric vehicle supply chain separated between the East and West. It looks like it. So they are making separate supply chain. Now, you are a global company, Tesla is, global customers, but gigafactories in China, Germany, and Austin that I thank you for hosting us in. How do you navigate through all of this?
I have to say it's with great difficulty. I mean, I'm really working at the absolute most amount that I can work from morning till night, 7 days a week. So this is not something I'd recommend, frankly. Yeah. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
But it is. And I'm just looking at this video and it's so bizarre.
Well, you look like you're in a dark place.
I'm sitting here in the dark, surrounded by candles.
I know. Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
So that's the beauty of being in equator, Elon. When it's dark there, it's bright here.
Really?
Elon, you know, Indonesia has this ambition to be electro-state as opposed to petro-state. In the past, petro-state, but today, electro-state, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So we want to be the Saudi Arabia of decarbonization. We have peatland, mangroves, tropical forests, carbon dioxide capture. We also have critical battery materials. We also have potential for renewable energy. How should Indonesia contribute to this stabilizing the EV ecosystem, in your view?
Yeah, well, I think Indonesia's making a significant contribution already with the production of critical ingredients for batteries. So nickel, as you mentioned, is a key ingredient in lithium-ion batteries, especially for long-range vehicles. A lot of times people hear the word like lithium-ion battery, but lithium is actually only a few % of the battery weight, whereas nickel is actually the majority of the battery weight in long-range vehicles, and which will also be essential for aircraft, which require a high energy density battery pack. So I think, and then Indonesia is also doing a lot of renewable energy generation. So, so the combination of sustainable mining, renewable energy generation, and just overall, sort of advancements in internet connectivity and education, I think Indonesia is going to make a great contribution to the world.
Oh, great, thank you. Now, a lot of developing countries are already in G20, like Indonesia, today hosting, and you have India, South Africa. Any thoughts about making a little bit more affordable, but still good quality Tesla? Maybe we call it Model I, Indonesia, India?
Yeah, I can't speak too much about the future Tesla product development, except to say that we do think that making a much more affordable vehicle would make a lot of sense, and we should do such a thing.
Oh, great to hear that. So let's go to SpaceX, Elon. So when we went to Boca Chica to see your facility, impressive facility, by the way, right? First, I have never been to Starbase, right? But I overheard some engineers saying that maybe the best place to launch these rockets are from the equator. So
yeah, it's true.
It's true, right? Indonesia has
actually like the best would be at like a really tall mountain at the equator.
Okay, mountains on the equator. Got it. So Indonesia has 5,000 kilometers of equator, and in fact, our new capital is going to be on the equator. Should we be talking more about launching pads of SpaceX being in Indonesia? And maybe also you can launch some Starlinks. We need some connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think long term it would make a lot of sense to have launch platforms around the world. And I think you could actually even have a situation where you travel by rocket from one part of the world to the next, because then you can travel at over 20 times the speed of sound. So for a rocket can get to the complete other side of the world in 45 minutes, and half sort of to most places in about 20 minutes.
Got it.
So I think that this would really open up the world if you could travel conceivably, to anywhere in the world in less than an hour.
Yeah. By the way, Elon, over here in Indonesia, you are not called Elon Musk. You are called Mas Elon.
Okay.
Mas is brother.
Okay, cool.
Brother Elon.
Thank you.
So Mas Elon, we threw some questions on social media asking, what would you ask Elon if you happen to see him, live? Right? And maybe you have heard this question, but why do you talk so much about sending people to Mars while probably more than half of the people on Earth still think that the world is flat?
Yeah, well, I think it's an exciting future if you can imagine like where we're a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species, and ultimately out there among the stars. And that's just, I find that to just be an incredibly exciting, inspiring future, and to think that one day that such things might happen. And the world, of course, will always have problems, and that we need to solve the problems of Earth. And I think 99% of our effort should be on solving the problems of Earth. And I think 1% of our effort should be on being a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species, because that's just incredibly exciting and inspiring, and there need to be things. Life can't just be about solving problems. There've got to be things that inspire you and that make you glad to be alive and happy to wake up in the morning.
From SpaceX, going back to Earth, Boring Company, we had a chance to go to your facility in Las Vegas. Now, Indonesia and a lot of developing countries, and even developed countries, have a lot of traffic. Are you thinking to do projects of Boring Company in developing country cities, especially maybe using electric buses? So you can solve two things at the same time, traffic and CO2 emission.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, my joke about tunnels is that tunnels are underappreciated. I mean, it's not the best joke in the world, but I think the only answer that I can see for congestion in cities is tunnels. I think flying cars are, I think because of the fact that they generate a lot of noise and a lot of wind, and there's always some possibility that it will fall on your head, and it certainly would not be good for privacy if flying cars were flying over your house all the time. I think, on the other hand, that tunnels do not suffer from any of those issues. And so like you can think of flying cars as like 3D above ground, and tunnels are like 3D below ground. And we have some of our first tunnels with electric vehicles operating in them in Las Vegas. So I'd encourage anyone who visits Las Vegas to try them out. It sounds so simple, but electric vehicles in tunnels are absolutely an answer to the worst possible congestion of any city, because you can go as many layers of tunnels deep as you would like until the traffic congestion is addressed.
Great, thank you. We're getting to the end of the interview, so I'm going to try to take advantage of it.
Sure.
The right questions to ask for the millennials and Gen Zs. We have 70% of the Indonesian population. They are in that category. What are the great questions to ask today, looking at the next 20 years? Because in 20 years, Elon, Indonesia wants to be in golden era in 2045, 100 years of the independence. What are great questions to ask?
You asked me what are the great questions to ask?
What should be they ask? What they should be asking?
Let me think about that.
Well, we are not millennials and Gen Z, so that's okay, I guess.
Well, I think one of the questions to ask is, what future do you want? Like, what is the good future? I mean, I think one where civilization is growing and the scope and scale of consciousness are growing along with it is a great future. You know, obviously one where we transition to a sustainable energy, because the counterpoint is unsustainable energy. The faster we can transition to a sustainable energy economy, the better. But we will transition to a sustainable energy economy. Just a question of how long it takes. And then I think just furthering human knowledge so we can understand the nature of the universe and our place in it, and how we got here, and I don't know, the meaning of life. And as I said earlier, going and exploring the star systems, and maybe we'll find, alien civilizations, or discover alien civilizations that existed millions of years ago, but may no longer exist, but we see the ruins of ancient civilizations. I think that would be incredibly interesting, just to, go out there and explore the galaxy.
I see. Thank you. And Bobby, the last question. You are a true global citizen, born and raised in South Africa, made it well in America, becoming global entrepreneurial hero. We are here in Southeast Asia. So what should the next, and maybe better, Elon Musk of the East be focusing on in the next 10 years? Because a lot of people in this room, they want to be Elon Musk of the East. Why not, right?
Well, I mean, I'd be careful what you wish for. I'm not sure how many people would actually like to be me. They would like to be what they imagine being me, which is not the same as actually being me. I mean, the amount that I torture myself.
want to make this world better, we have to close that financing gap, which is estimated to be $3 to $5 trillion. That financing gap is going up. It's not going down, unfortunately. If you look at the combined ODAs of governments, you talk $150 billion. That big gap needs to be filled by business. Business needs to step up. It's the most important message. What does that mean at the end of the day? I think in most cases, we actually know what needs to be done. We have the technology. On a global level, we have more money than we know what to deal with, to be honest. So how can we now muster, if you want to